Hey folks, today we are diving into a story about a man who learned the hardest way that the person you trust the most can inflict the deepest wound. Our protagonist is a brilliant, quiet software engineer who believed he had a perfect life, a loving wife, and a great career. But his powerful, charismatic boss decided he wanted more than just loyalty from his employees. He wanted our man's wife. They mocked him, they humiliated him, and they thought he was a fool who would just take it. They did not know they were mocking a man who plays the long game. So, before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I am doing here. Let us know where you are listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. There is a photograph on my mantelpiece, or at least there used to be. It was taken 5 years ago at a little Italian place downtown. In it, Marianne is laughing, her head tilted back, her blonde hair catching the light from the candle on the table. I am leaning in, smiling. A genuine, uncomplicated smile from a man who thought he had everything figured out. We looked happy. We were happy, I think. Or maybe we were just performing a version of happiness we both thought the other one wanted to see. Looking at that photo now is like looking at a stranger's life. A life where the code was simple, the variables were known, and the outcome was predictable. That life is gone. It was stolen from me. Not by a thief in the night, but by a man I called my boss, and with the willing complicity of the woman in that photograph. My name is Troy. I am 38 years old, or I was when this all began. My world was one of logic, of structured systems and elegant code. I am a senior software architect for Apex Corporation, or I was. I build complex digital frameworks, things that run silently in the background, invisible to the end user, but absolutely essential for the entire system to function. My work is my craft. It is quiet, it is precise, and it does not lie. Code is honest. It does what you tell it to do. People are a different matter entirely. Marianne and I had been married for 10 years. She was the beautiful, chaotic variable to my logical constant. Where I found comfort in quiet nights and a good book, she craved the energy of a crowd, the sparkle of a party. I loved her for it. She pulled me out of my shell, and I provided her with a stable foundation, a safe harbor. It seemed like a perfect symbiosis. We lived in a nice house in the suburbs, the kind with a 2-car garage and a well-manicured lawn. It was the American dream, or a very convincing replica of it. The first crack in that foundation appeared about a year ago, disguised as a fantastic opportunity. Marianne, who had been working as an administrative assistant in the marketing department, got a promotion. A big one. She was to become the new executive secretary for the CEO himself, Richard Sterling. I remember the night she told me. She was practically vibrating with excitement. "Troy, you will not believe it. Richard Sterling, the Richard Sterling, he personally chose me." I knew Richard, of course. Everyone at Apex knew Richard. He was a corporate titan, the kind of man who graced the covers of business magazines. He was 55, silver-haired, and possessed a charisma that could charm a snake out of its skin. He commanded every room he entered, his voice a smooth baritone that exuded power and absolute confidence. He was everything I was not. "That is great, honey," I said, trying to match her energy. But a small, cold knot formed in my stomach. I had been in meetings with Richard. I had seen how he operated. He had a way of looking at people, a predatory assessment that sized you up and found you wanting. He called me his genius boy, or his ace in the hole in front of the board, but it always felt less like a compliment and more like he was branding his livestock. Marianne's new job changed her, or perhaps it just revealed a part of her that was always there. The work hours became longer, spilling into late nights and weekends. "Richard is closing a huge deal in Asia. I have to be available," she would say, her eyes glued to the new top-of-the-line smartphone the company had given her. Then came the gifts. A designer handbag she said was a bonus for the team. A pair of expensive earrings that were a personal thank you from Richard for landing the new client. I am not a fool. I am a man who deals in patterns and logic. And the pattern I was seeing was deeply unsettling. The distance between us grew in direct proportion to her proximity to Richard's world. Our conversations became monologues of her quoting Richard's business wisdom, talking about his yacht, his penthouse apartment, his brilliant strategies. He was becoming the sun in her solar system, and I was a distant, forgotten planet. The Chekhov's gun, the piece that would eventually bring down the whole rotten structure, was introduced on a Tuesday over a bland cafeteria lunch. My colleague Dave was complaining about his 401k. "It is a bloodbath, Troy. I do not know why I even look at it," he groaned, poking at his salad. I shrugged. "The market goes up, the market goes down. You have to play the long game." "Easy for you to say," he said. "You probably have some genius algorithm picking stocks for you." I gave a small laugh. "Nothing like that. I do have one little side investment, a tech startup a couple of my old college buddies founded years ago. I threw some money at it for fun, a total gamble." "Oh yeah? Anything good?" "It is called Orion Innovations," I said. "They are in the data security space. Niche stuff. But they are smart guys. It is doing okay. Better than okay lately." I said it casually, a minor detail in a boring conversation. I had no idea at the time that this small seed, this little side investment, would one day grow into a forest fire that would burn their world to the ground. The inciting incident, the moment my quiet suspicion turned into sickening certainty, was the Apex Corporation annual gala. It was a black tie affair held at the city's most opulent hotel, a night for the company to pat itself on the back and for the executives to display their success like peacocks. I hated these events. The forced smiles, the hollow schmoozing. It was all a performance. But Marianne lived for it. She wore a red dress, a stunning backless number that was far more expensive than anything she had ever owned before. "Richard's wife has a personal shopper. She helped me pick it out," she explained, avoiding my eyes in the mirror. At the hotel, the air was thick with perfume and ambition. Richard was in his element, holding court, a glass of champagne in one hand, the other resting just a little too long on the small of Marianne's back. I stood a few feet away, feeling like a ghost at my own wife's coronation. The humiliation was a slow burn. It came in small, sharp cuts, an executive's wife giving me a look of pity, a shared laugh between Richard and Marianne across the room that felt like a secret I was not privy to. The main event was Richard's speech. He stood at the podium, a benevolent king addressing his subjects. "A company is not just about profits and losses," he boomed, his gaze sweeping the room. "It is about people. It is about loyalty." And as he said the word loyalty, his eyes landed directly on Marianne, who was standing near the front. He gave her a slow, deliberate smile. A few people on the executive table chuckled knowingly. The room felt like it was closing in on me. The air grew thin. It was a public branding, a declaration of ownership, and I was the only one who did not seem to be in on the joke. I needed air. I walked out to a small, deserted terrace overlooking the city lights. I just stood there, my hands gripping the cold stone balustrade, trying to get the code in my head to make sense of this. But there was no logic, only betrayal. A few minutes later, I went to find her, to tell her we were leaving. I found them in a secluded corridor leading to the service elevators. They were not kissing. It was nothing so crude. He was leaning against the wall, and she was standing close, her hand on his chest. He whispered something in her ear, and she let out a low, throaty laugh, a laugh I had not heard in years. It was intimate. It was proprietary. It was a dagger in my heart. The car ride home was silent. The city lights blurred past the window. The silence was heavier than any argument we ever had. Back in our house, the house I had worked so hard for, I finally spoke. "Marianne, what is going on with you and Richard?" She did not even have the decency to look ashamed. She turned on me, her face a mask of indignation. "What are you talking about? You are being ridiculous. You were embarrassing tonight, Troy, just standing in the corner looking pathetic. Do you know how that makes me look?" Gaslighting. It is a classic manipulation tactic. Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. The next morning, I was summoned to Richard's office. It was on the top floor, a cavernous space with a panoramic view of the city. He was sitting behind a massive mahogany desk. He gestured for me to sit. "Troy," he began, his voice smooth and concerned. "You are one of my best guys, a real asset. But I have to say, you seemed a little off last night. Everything okay on the home front?" I just looked at him. The audacity was breathtaking. He was probing the wound he had just inflicted. He was the arsonist asking if I smelled smoke. He continued, leaning forward. "I just want to make sure you do not let any personal issues, any insecurities, affect the incredible work you do for us here. The company needs you focused." That was it. That was the moment the grief died, and something else, something cold and hard and sharp, was born in its place. The hurt was still there, a hot coal in my chest, but it was now encased in ice. My mind, the logical, methodical mind of a programmer, began to work. It started building a new system, a system of consequences. I looked Richard Sterling right in the eye. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I even managed a small, thin smile. "Thank you for the concern, Richard," I said, my voice even. "I appreciate it. I will not let it happen." He smiled back, a satisfied, predatory smile. He thought he had won. He thought he had put the little engineer back in his box. He had no idea that he had just armed a bomb. And I would spend every waking moment from then on making sure that when it went off, he was standing right at the epicenter. Walking out of Richard's office that day was like stepping into a different reality. The air in the hallway seemed sharper, the colors more defined. The grief that had fogged my mind for weeks had evaporated, leaving behind a pristine, cold clarity. I was no longer a victim. I was a strategist. My life had been a stable, predictable system, and an outside force had introduced a malicious code to corrupt it. My new project, my sole focus, was to write a patch that would not just fix the damage, but quarantine and delete the virus permanently. The project's name was Richard Sterling. The first step was to change the rules of engagement at home. I stopped questioning Marianne. I stopped looking at her with hurt or suspicion. I became the perfect, accommodating husband she no longer deserved. I was agreeable, quiet, and seemingly defeated. When she came home late, smelling of expensive wine and a man's cologne I did not wear, I would simply look up from my laptop and say, "I hope you had a productive evening." When she bought new, expensive clothes for her updated executive wardrobe, I would just nod and say, "That looks very professional, dear." My compliance had the exact effect I predicted. It disarmed her. She saw my passivity not as a strategy, but as surrender. It made her careless. She believed I was a beaten man, a simple programmer incapable of confronting the new, powerful world she inhabited. My perceived weakness gave her a sense of security. And in security, people make mistakes. They leave trails. Her phone, once guarded, was now left on the nightstand. Her conversations with Richard, once whispered behind closed doors, became bolder, conducted in the next room under the guise of work. I became a ghost in my own home, observing, listening, and compiling data. Every piece of information, every casual mention of a business deal or a corporate weakness, was a brick in the foundation of my plan. While I played the part of the cuckolded husband at home, my nights were a different story. After Marianne fell asleep, I would go to my study and my real work would begin. My little side investment, Orion Innovations, was more than just a passive holding. I was on their advisory board. They were a small, aggressive company run by two of the sharpest minds I knew. We had been planning a major market disruption for over a year, accumulating capital, waiting for the right target. I was their inside eye on the tech giants, the man who understood the legacy systems and corporate bloat of companies like Apex. "The market is ripe for a shakeup, Troy," my partner Ben said during one of our late-night video calls. "These dinosaurs are slow and arrogant. We just need one of them to stumble." I stared at his face on the screen, a new, cold thought crystallizing in my mind. "Do not worry, Ben," I said. "I think I know how to make one of them stumble." The opportunity arrived 2 months later, gift-wrapped and delivered by Richard himself. He called a high-level strategy meeting with the heads of engineering and product development. I was there as the lead architect. Richard stood before a whiteboard, radiating energy. "Gentlemen," he began, "it is time for Apex to make a legacy move. I have identified an acquisition target that will secure our dominance for the next decade, a company called Viridia Tech." A murmur went through the room. Viridia was known for its cutting-edge AI-driven data analysis platform. They were the darlings of the tech media. They were also, as I knew from my Orion connections, in serious trouble. "They have the technology of the future," Richard continued, his eyes gleaming. "I want us to own it. I am putting together a team for the due diligence, and I want you, Troy, to lead the technical review. I want you to go through their code, their infrastructure, their patents, everything. I need to know if their tech is the real deal." I felt a surge of something like electricity. It was perfect. He was handing me the very weapon I needed. He was asking the fox to guard the henhouse. I kept my expression neutral, betraying none of the cold elation I felt inside. "Of course, Richard," I said, my voice steady. "I will give it my full attention. I will tear it down to the studs." "That is my genius, boy," he boomed, clapping me on the shoulder. "I knew I could count on you." The next 6 weeks were a blur of intense work. I was given access to Viridia's most sensitive data. I flew to their headquarters, met with their engineers, and dove deep into their source code. And as I worked, I played 2 games at once. For Richard and the Apex board, I was building a case for a flawless acquisition. My reports were masterpieces of corporate enthusiasm. I praised Viridia's elegant architecture, their innovative algorithms, their scalable cloud infrastructure. I wrote sentences like, Viridia's core platform represents a quantum leap forward, and the synergies with our existing product line are not just significant, they are transformative. I was painting a picture of a prize so valuable it was worth any cost. But my real work, my secret work, was to confirm the fatal flaw I already knew existed. Through my Orion channels, I had learned that a small, aggressive German company had filed a major patent infringement lawsuit against Viridia in the European Union. Their claim was that Viridia's core algorithm was built on their stolen intellectual property. It was a company-killing lawsuit, a time bomb ticking quietly under Viridia's shiny exterior. In my official due diligence report, a document that ran over 200 pages, I did my duty. I included the risk. I buried it. On page 147, in a dense appendix titled Contingent Liabilities and Jurisdictional Risks, I wrote a single, carefully worded sentence. A pending intellectual property claim in the EU by a third party presents a low probability but high-impact risk factor pending judicial review. I even brought it up to Richard in person, as a casual aside. We were in the boardroom, looking over the final presentation. The tech is solid, Richard, I said, pointing to a chart. Absolutely revolutionary. There is one small flag from legal, a nuisance patent suit in Germany. Their lawyers are confident it is just a shakedown attempt, totally frivolous. It is in the report, but it is background noise. Richard waved his hand dismissively, his eyes fixed on the projected revenue numbers. Legal guys are paid to worry. If the tech is good, we can crush a small patent troll. Do not worry about it, Troy. Focus on the upside. He did not care. He had already fallen in love with the story of his own brilliance. He wanted his legacy, and he would not let a minor detail get in the way. He saw what he wanted to see, and I had made sure the picture he saw was beautiful. While I was meticulously crafting his downfall, the situation at home and in the office deteriorated into a parody of disrespect. Marianne was now acting as the unofficial queen of Apex. She would call me from Richard's office, her tone clipped and important. One afternoon, I was deep in debugging a critical server issue when my phone rang. It was her. "Troy, I need you to leave work early," she said, without any preamble. "The plumber is coming to fix the guest bathroom sink and I cannot be there. Richard and I are in a crucial strategy session." In the background, I could hear the distinct clink of glasses and the low thrum of jazz music. It was not a strategy session. It was happy hour in his penthouse office. My hand tightened on my phone. The coldness inside me sharpened to a razor's edge. He was not just sleeping with my wife. He was using her to run his errands, to manage his life, and in the process, to manage mine. I took a slow breath. "No problem," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "I will handle it." I hung up the phone and stared at the lines of code on my screen. Each character had a purpose. Each line executed a command. It was a world of order. I would restore order to my own life. They just had to wait for the program to run. "Okay, folks. I have to jump in here. The sheer disrespect is infuriating. What would you do in Troy's shoes at this exact moment? Do you stay the course with the plan? Or do you just walk out that door and never look back? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now back to the story. The day of the final board presentation was Richard's coronation. He stood before the board, a conquering hero, and laid out his vision for the future of Apex, a future built on the back of Viridia Tech. My technical due diligence report was the centerpiece of his argument. He quoted my findings, displayed my charts, and leveraged my name as a seal of approval. As you can see from the exhaustive analysis conducted by our own Troy, a man whose technical acumen is second to none, Richard declared, gesturing toward me. This is a once-in-a-decade opportunity. The technology is unassailable. I sat at the table, a humble engineer, and nodded when required. I watched these powerful men, swayed by a narrative I had carefully constructed, unanimously approve the expenditure of $400 million to buy a company I knew was functionally worthless. The deal closed 2 weeks later. An email went out to the entire company announcing the acquisition. That evening, Richard hosted a lavish celebration party at a downtown steakhouse for the executive team and those who had worked on the deal. Marianne was there, attached to his arm, wearing a new dress the color of money. She floated through the room, accepting congratulations as if she had negotiated the deal herself. Richard, in his toast, raised his glass to me. "And a special thanks to Troy," he said, his voice magnanimous, "for his brilliant work that made this all possible. His dedication is an example to us all." People applauded. Marianne smiled at me, a smug, pitying little smile that said, "See what real power looks like?" I raised my glass back at him. I smiled. Inside, I felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy. Just the cold, satisfying click of a complex machine's final gear locking into place. The trap was set. The bait had been taken. The bomb was armed, and the timer was now ticking. All I had to do was wait for it to go off. The weeks following the Viridia acquisition were quiet, almost serene. It was the calm before the storm. The integration teams were formed, and the slow, bureaucratic process of absorbing one company into another began. Richard was insufferable. He walked the halls of Apex like a Roman emperor who had just conquered a new province. He and Marianne were the undisputed king and queen of the company. They took a celebratory trip to the Caribbean, which was thinly disguised as a market research tour. I saw the pictures Marianne posted online, the two of them on a yacht, smiling under the sun. I felt nothing. I was a scientist watching a culture grow in a petri dish, waiting for the precise moment to introduce the agent that would wipe it out. The agent arrived on a Tuesday morning. It did not come as a memo or an email. It came from the outside world, a headline on the Wall Street Journal's website. Apex acquisition in jeopardy as Viridia Tech loses landmark patent case, core technology now public domain. The news hit the company like a physical shockwave. The stock, which had been trading at a 5-year high after the acquisition announcement, fell off a cliff. It dropped 30% in the first hour of trading. Panic erupted. Phones were ringing non-stop. The corporate communications department went into lockdown. The confident swagger that had defined Apex was replaced by a frantic, fearful energy. An emergency board meeting was called for that afternoon. The atmosphere in the boardroom was not just tense. It was toxic. The air was thick with blame and fear. Richard, who had looked like a titan just 24 hours earlier, now looked small and pale, his expensive suit suddenly looking 2 sizes too big for him. He was sweating. He tried to deflect, to rage. "We were blindsided. Viridia's leadership lied to us during the negotiations. Our legal team should have caught this." The company's general counsel, a stern, humorless woman named Eleanor, was not having it. Our legal team flagged the risk based on the documents provided, Richard. The final decision to proceed was yours. What about the technical review? Another board member demanded, his face grim. We were told the technology was bulletproof. Troy? All eyes turned to me. I sat at the table, my hands resting calmly in front of me. I felt my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. This was the moment. My report highlighted the technology's performance, which was, and is, exceptional, I said, my voice even. It also noted, per standard procedure, any potential non-technical risks that were discovered during the process. Eleanor nodded, opening a thick binder in front of her. I have Mr. Henderson's full due diligence report here. If you will all turn to Appendix C, subsection 4, page 147. There was a rustling of paper as the board members fumbled through their copies. Eleanor cleared her throat and read the sentence I had so carefully crafted 6 weeks before. A pending intellectual property claim in the EU by a third party presents a low probability but high impact risk factor pending judicial review. The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The sentence hung in the air. A perfect, elegant instrument of destruction. I had not lied. I had not hidden anything. I had documented the risk precisely as protocol required. I had even called it high impact. And I had watched Richard himself dismiss it as background noise. It was checkmate. There was nowhere for him to run. He had been so blinded by his own ambition, so eager for his legacy, that he had ignored the single sentence that would have saved him. His arrogance was the weapon, and I had simply shown him where to point it. He was fired before the meeting ended. His security pass was deactivated, his corporate accounts frozen. He was escorted from the building by security, a disgraced king cast out of his own castle. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Richard's wife, a prominent socialite, filed for divorce the next day, her lawyers making it clear they intended to take him for everything he had left. His name was mud in the financial world. No one would touch him. Marianne's world collapsed along with his. She was fired a day later, a casualty of the new regime clearing out anyone associated with Richard. She showed up at my house that weekend. The confident, powerful woman was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. She was crying, her makeup running. She pleaded. She apologized. She told me she had made a terrible mistake, that Richard had manipulated her, that she loved me and had always loved me. I listened patiently, without interruption. For the first time, I saw her for what she truly was. Not a monster, but something worse. A transaction. She had traded me for what she thought was a better deal, and now that the deal had gone sour, she was trying to return the merchandise. When she finished her tearful, desperate monologue, I just looked at her. The anger and hurt were long gone, replaced by a profound, empty pity. I need some time to think, Marianne, I said. I did not say no. I did not say yes. I left her in the purgatory of uncertainty, a place I knew she would hate more than anything. A week later, the final move was made. With Apex Corporation's stock in the toilet, its leadership in disarray, and its reputation shattered, Orion Innovations, my little side investment, announced a formal hostile takeover bid. Backed by a consortium of powerful venture capital firms, their offer was low, but it was the only offer on the table. The battered Apex board had no choice but to accept. The transition was swift. My name was never mentioned in the press releases. To the world, I was just another senior engineer who had survived the merger. The final scene took place a month after the takeover was complete. A town hall meeting was called to introduce the new leadership team from Orion to the remaining Apex employees. The atmosphere was a mix of hope and anxiety. The doors to the main auditorium opened, and Ben, the CEO of Orion, walked to the stage. He was flanked by his new executive team. And walking beside him, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark gray suit, was me. I saw them from the stage. Richard and Marianne. He had been allowed back in the building to clear out the last of his personal belongings from a small, borrowed office. She was with him, a ghost clinging to a ghost. They were standing at the back of the room. I saw the moment they recognized me. I saw the flicker of confusion in their eyes, followed by the dawning, sickening wave of absolute horror. The blood drained from their faces. The little engineer. The quiet, pathetic husband. It all clicked into place in their minds. The reports, the lawsuit, the takeover. It was all me. After the meeting, I made my way through the crowd. They were still there, frozen in place as if they were trapped in a nightmare. I walked right up to them. Richard looked broken, a hollowed-out shell of the titan he once was. He looked at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no words coming out. "You taught me a valuable lesson, Richard," I said, my voice quiet and calm. "An important lesson about due diligence. You have to understand every single variable before you execute a plan. You have to know who you are in business with." I then turned to Marianne. Her eyes were wide with terror and a desperate final plea. She started to say my name. "Troy, I held up a hand, a small, simple gesture that stopped her cold. "You wanted a life of power and consequence, Marianne," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion except a profound finality. "You got one. As for us, our contract is terminated. I grant you your freedom." I turned and walked away, leaving them in the ruins of the life they had tried to build on top of mine. I did not look back. 6 months later, I am standing in that same top-floor office, Richard's old office. It is my office now. I am the Chief Technology Officer of the new, merged company. The view of the city is incredible from up here. For a long time, I thought revenge was about inflicting pain, about balancing the scales. I was wrong. True revenge is not about destruction. It is about building. It is about taking the rubble of a life that was torn down and using it to build a foundation for something stronger, something better. I did not get even. I got ahead. I won, not by shouting and fighting, but by being quiet, by being patient, and by writing a single, perfect line of code that made the whole corrupt system crash. And that, folks, is the end of Troy's story. What a masterclass in patience and strategy. A powerful reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should be paying the most attention to. Thank you so much for joining me today. I truly appreciate every single one of you who tunes in. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and ring that bell so you never miss a new video. Your support means the world to me. Please share your thoughts on Troy's story in the comments below. I read as many as I can. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. I hope to see you all again soon.